Hi, I'm Deanna Joe, and welcome to my channel, Responsible Faith. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Alicia Hall, and she is going to share her story of leaving the United Pentecostal Church International and what it was like to grow up in that movement, and her church two story as well. And that's been a recent development as far as criminal charges. And so, Alicia, welcome to Responsible Faith.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to do this. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to share because I think your story is very moving, and I think there are going to be people who can really relate to this. So let's just jump right in. How did you get into the UPC? Were you born in? Did your family join? Did you join? How did that all start?
Yeah, so I was born in. I'm one of four kids, and we were all born into the religion.
Yeah.
So, yeah, known it my whole life.
Yeah,
So,
same.
yeah.
Cut my
Yep.
teeth on the pews. You're born in the hospital sometime during the week, and you hit service on Sunday, or
Yeah, within just a matter of days, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah.
same
So,
here.
yeah, my whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what was your time like in the UPC? Of course, there's always good, there's always bad. For those of us who leave, I think we get accused of only pretending that, everything was bad. I don't think any of us do that. We can all acknowledge that we had some fun times and some good times growing up in the church. What
Mhm.
was your time like?
Yeah, so definitely good and bad, lots of both. But growing up in the church, I also went to a private Bible school, and the school was attached to the church. It was all just one big, area. We had the sanctuary, and then
Okay, so
through the
that was
double doors.
that was your school.
That was our school.
Okay, you
Yeah.
didn't attend public school.
No, I did my 11th grade. I told my parents I wanted to just try out public school, and they let me, and then I went back and I graduated with a class of three, including myself,
Okay.
from the private school. So yeah, I was involved in everything. My mom was a Sunday school teacher for a while, service 3 times a week, youth groups Friday nights. Once a month, we'd go to other churches and get together with, other churches, things like that. Just everything, Bible quizzing, youth camps. I went to junior camp, senior camp, family camp. All of my friends and a lot of my family were UPC. So I was pretty sheltered. And yeah, it was a good time growing up, I thought. It wasn't until I got older and a lot had happened that I really started to put things together and realize that, stuff just isn't adding up, and things just don't feel, in my experience, safe anymore.
Yeah.
And so then I was 27, I think, when I left the church.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so that was, yeah, from birth to 27, that was all I knew. Like, I knew nothing else. I got accused of being naive a lot, which is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't a bad time. Obviously, bad things happened during that time. But what we're taught growing up in that religion is just to forgive and obey. And so a lot that had happened, that was my reaction, to just not even really give it time,
Mhm.
not think about what was happening, and just, when it was happening, it was happening. And when it wasn't, it wasn't. It was like two separate worlds in my mind.
Do you
So
think
yeah.
that culture, not just the UPC, like I know sometimes I get accused of, making it just seem like it's the UPC that has this culture when it is broader evangelicalism. But I guess, we talk about what we know, right? But do you
Yeah.
think that the church can almost set up the situation to make it easy for abusers to abuse and easier for victims to stay quiet?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
That has been my experience. 100%. Forgiveness trumps protection
Yeah.
is how it feels. Yeah. And
Did you
it's,
feel like males trumped females too?
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And then again, not till I was older, like in my teens, where I started to realize that also. I had a friend who she didn't tell me for years. She kept it to herself for years. And we were really close that after service, the pastor's wife called her into the office to tell her that her shirt was too tight, according to an adult male man, guy in the congregation. And it was causing him to fall, stumble. And so she was, you know, she had to change her shirt. And when I heard that, I was a teen. We were both teens at the time. And I was like, in my mind then, I was like, oh, yeah, like, oh, you better change your shirt. It is a sin to make him stumble,
Right.
But he was a grown man and we were just teenagers. And the older I got, I still think about it all the time. So, yeah, it's,
The older you get, the more you realize how creepy a lot of things were, but you were just so naive. You didn't know.
yeah. And you just followed what,
Because that is creepy. A grown man, probably old enough to be her dad, was
mhm,
looking at her and thinking how tight her shirt was or how fitted or whatever it was about the shirt that appealed to him, and
mhm.
sexualizing a teenage girl. And it's interesting that the response is always, you cover up. And
Yes.
I can pretty much guarantee that the pastor's wife did not tell the man to exercise self-control.
Yeah. Obviously, I wasn't there for the conversation, but I think we both know how it does
I would be
how it
willing to
goes.
bet $10,000 that
Same.
the conversation did not go in the way of, you're a grown adult, you have the Holy Spirit. One of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control. Walk in that.
Yes, yes, because there was no problem with her shirt. There was none. She was. We were all very conservative. Conservative. We followed the dress code. Longer sleeves, higher. Shirts to touch your collarbone, nothing
Yeah.
too tight. Like. So yeah, it was
So he had a
definitely
problem
not.
and they made it her problem.
He made it her problem.
Yeah.
And then the cherry on top of it was the parents were never notified. They went and spoke directly with this youth girl, and then that was the end of it. And that has been my experience with every time there's been some sort of problem, especially when it's sexual in nature, that it's just the kid that they deal with,
Yeah.
and it's never really brought any further than that. And I know that there are some ministers and some pastors that have done the right thing and
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
So it's not all, but in my experience, it's been all.
Well, and
So,
like I know Debbie McNulty and I have talked at great length about these kind of topics, and she is convinced that they basically do not recognize children. Like, it pretty much, as soon as you hit 10, 12 years old, you're treated like an adult.
yeah, yeah.
So, you know, they don't go to your parents. I mean, I experienced the same thing. I was 17. My pastor called me in the office all by myself with him. It was a Sunday morning. It was before service. My parents were right in the congregation. It would have taken him 5 seconds to go get them and say, yeah, can you guys just come in here for a minute? We want to talk about something. He didn't. He isolated me by myself and was very intimidating. And so
Mhm.
you do get treated like an adult.
Yeah. And that is in any other sort of organization, like when it comes to a minor, there
Yeah.
has to be a parent involved. And so I do think that should be a standing rule or policy, or to me, it's common sense. So I don't know why it needs to be written somewhere.
It's
um,
it's safety and protection for everyone.
Absolutely. Especially when it's something like this, where there's an older man checking
Yes.
out this girl, like bring in the parents. come on.
Well, and
Yeah.
how does this girl ever feel comfortable being around that man in the services ever again? Like, how does she not feel self-conscious in front of him?
Oh, for sure. I'm sure she still thinks about that. I mean, if I think about it and it wasn't me,
Yeah,
directly, I know she does. And that's just something that she shouldn't have to carry with her.
I
To this
agree.
day, I'm sure she thinks about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, how it affected her. Yeah. So I do think that there's a problem.
Yeah, I would agree. So before we
Mhm.
get right into the situation that you ended up having to deal with abuse-wise, you mentioned that you dressed very conservatively and stuff. How I always ask women, how did the dress standards impact you? Were you cool with them? Was it a nuisance? Did you push the
Yeah.
boundaries? How did that work out for you?
Gotcha. No, I actually never had a problem with it. And it was because my circle had, friends and family with the same beliefs for the
Mhm.
most part. There was never a time where I felt like I stood out. I
Okay.
was always with that group of people. And honestly, my parents weren't super, super strict on it when we were at home or like on, vacation or like at the lake or whatever. Like we didn't have to wear like the long shirts over our swimsuits, things like that. And it never seemed to be a problem. Like it wasn't like, oh, if you don't cover up, look at all these people at the beach. Like we went to the beach, we went swimming. And I think that was more of how my parents, they came in. My mom came in like when she was like 13 and then left and then back again for good when she was like 18 or something like that. And my dad actually didn't come to church all the time. Like he would
Okay.
stay home, have lunch ready for us. He
Hmm.
would support us. He never said a bad thing about it. And that was just life. Like, so it wasn't super strict. We never pushed the boundaries. We had horses. And if we wanted to go on a trail ride, we could wear a pair of jeans if we wanted to. But for the most part, we wore the culottes and just tried to make sure no one would see us, things like that. So the dress code wasn't really a problem. Like I never had a problem with it. My junior year when I did go to public school and I was the only UPC girl there, that's when I realized like I stand out. I was the church girl. I was so shy. It was hard to hold conversations. Like I wouldn't even eat lunch in the lunchroom. I found a friend, then we'd just walk the halls. And because I did feel like, whew, I am different.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until, yeah, 11th grade that I kind of felt that way. And then I never really felt that way again because I went back to the Christian school.
Hmm.
And from there, I went to Bible college.
You were this good little church girl and you dressed very conservatively. Those are the two things. You didn't go the places where you would be in harm's way. You lived at the church and at your home. So, how
Mm-hmm.
in the world does abuse come to your door?
Exactly. And, to hear statements that have been said about, like if you just go to church, if you were just in church, bad things wouldn't happen. Sorry, there's a fly. Like the mental weight that and the blame you put on yourself for what happens too is just it you need therapy after
Oh,
being
yeah.
taught so many years that bad things don't happen like that if you're in a church. And then when they do and you have to try and process that, especially by yourself and especially as a kid,
Hmm.
it's really hard. And to be honest, I didn't even begin to process it until I was married and pregnant. And then I'm like, I get it. I get it. And that's when I really started setting boundaries and stuff. But yeah.
So, start at the beginning. How old were you when the abuse started, and how did it all happen? And, just share who your abuser was.
Gotcha. So my abuser was the pastor's son.
Hmm.
Sorry, notifications. And he also went to the church school. So he was about 17, a senior, and I was around 9. And he decided that he wanted to start offering piano lessons. It was during the school hours, and he could actually earn like extra credit or something for college. I don't know, something. So he decided to do this during school. They were paid lessons, we had to pay to take them. So our parents signed up. There was a handful of us that took lessons. So, like I said, it was during school hours, and it was the piano that we did the lessons on was the church piano on the platform. Like it was in the sanctuary, the safest place in the world. And the only thing that separated the sanctuary and the piano were these double doors. And as you swung them open, you could see into the school. And so my friends and I, we got signed up. We were so excited, bought the books. And I don't know how many lessons in we were when things started to take a turn and I would start to feel uncomfortable. He would walk very close to me as we would walk to the piano. At the age of 9, he'd put his hand on my butt as we were walking to the lessons. And so I try to walk, a little bit faster, and then things just kind of progressed from there. And I was so scared that someone was just going to open those doors and see it. And it wasn't like, oh, I wish someone would, so it would stop. It was, I'm going to be so embarrassed if someone sees this. I hope no one ever does.
Yeah,
I'm never going to say
in your 9-year-old mind, you're not realizing that you're just a child. You're holding part of the responsibility, even though it wasn't yours.
Exactly. Yeah. And there was also a camera that pointed at the platform, and the feed went into the nursery for during church services. So the nursery workers could watch the service. But during school hours, that TV was in a room where kids would go and, study, work by themselves or work one-on-one with a teacher. And all they had to do was flip on the power button. It was kids in there, not monitored sometimes. So if they just wanted to not do their homework, they could just turn on the TV and, watch piano lessons. And I was so afraid that people were watching. It was just so stressful. And it got to the point where, I don't know what time I was supposed to go into the sanctuary, but at like say 9:30, I was just supposed to go and meet him in there. And I would pretend like I lost track of time. I would go to the bathroom, stay in there for a long time, like, oh, I missed it, sorry. And that just never worked. And so it got to the point where I don't know how long it went on. Honestly, I think I blocked a lot of it out because I couldn't tell you how many lessons I even took or how long they went on. But I was trying to figure out how to get out of it. Yeah. And so in my mind, I was like, I'm going to stop taking piano lessons, but my parents will think it's weird because I've always wanted to learn. They know I want to learn some sort of musical instrument. And so I'm like, maybe I'm going to switch and ask to play the drums. I had no interest in playing the drums, but I'm like, a lot of the abuse happened because of the size of the piano bench and 2 people could fit on it. Right. And so in my 9-year-old mind, the drums just had a stool. Yeah. And so I'm like, this is better. And so I switched to drums, and not knowing that this was actually happening to my friends during their lessons, they all switched to drums too. So now we had no one taking piano lessons and all of these girls taking drum lessons. Like we had a church full of girl drummers. No one knew why, and we didn't know, and so honestly, I can't even say what happened after that. I know summer came and he went to college, and then that was it.
And he went to college.
Yep. He went to Bible college. Yes. Yep.
Gateway, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In Missouri.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So he moved away, and then he'd come back and visit every once in a while. It was always weird because I felt like people like expected us to be excited when he'd come back and visit. Like, he's one of the group, he went to the school, he's back visiting. And it was just always really awkward,
Mm-hmm.
like you didn't want to be standing off by yourself, like not in the circle with the group. So you like insert yourself into that uncomfortable situation so you didn't stand out. So now it was like 2005 and I graduated. It was the year I graduated high school. I'll back up a little bit. There was a time when we were all younger, my friends and I, we were at a slumber party, birthday sleepover, and we did end up finding out that it had happened to all of us.
So you're
Um,
thinking this is something that's just happening to me. You had no clue your friends were experiencing it as well.
no clue. No, none of us knew it. And we had all kept it a secret. And so, yeah, it was at the sleepover. And we all just kind of were like, I don't know how it came up, but someone must have said something. And then we all just kind of were like, yeah, like it is weird. And we kept getting more confident with telling our story. And we're like, wow, like that's happening. So gross. And then we just were like, went about with the birthday party. Like there was never, why would we tell?
Yeah.
He's the pastor's son. There's all this respect. What's going to happen? And it was never even, I don't think it was something that really crossed any of our minds.
Do you think in a child's mind you're thinking you'll get in trouble?
Yeah, a little bit. Um, I can't even really say that I thought I'd get in trouble. To me, I actually thought like he would get in trouble, and
Okay.
that was so much guilt. Then like
Mm-hmm.
I'm ruining his life, and I would be more blamed. Maybe that, I guess. So yeah, I would get in trouble, I guess, but for getting him in trouble. So it's hard to explain, but yeah, I don't know. None of us even talked about the possibility of telling any adult ever.
Yeah. And as far as like chunks of time being missing, like you can't really remember, that's super common for
Yeah.
especially childhood trauma, but even adult trauma
Mm-hmm.
to block out
So
things.
just block it out. Yeah. And pretend like it's not even, or not even pretending, but just literally forget.
Yeah, your mind, the mind's an amazing thing. It has this way of protecting you by shielding you.
Mm-hmm.
This is all going on. You come to graduation. What's going on?
So, graduate high school, and I didn't really have a plan for afterwards. The normal thing to do was to go to Bible school. It was never talked about, like there was never like, okay, after you graduate, there was no sort of guidance anywhere, really. It was just like, yay, you made it through high school.
Well, I
Congrats.
suppose if you go to public school, this is all everybody's talking about. They're talking about like where are you going to go to college? Do you have the credits that you need and everything? You
Mhm.
have guidance counselors. You go to some little Christian school in the basement, like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
going to grow up and be hopefully, a wife and a mom. And if you're lucky, you'll be a pastor's wife or an evangelist's wife. Like those are the
Mhm.
pinnacle.
Yeah. And like playing the piano up on the platform and
Yes.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So there was just no real plan. And the two girls that I graduated with had applied and were planning on going to Bible college. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure. So I did put in an application. And then I was just like, no, like not gonna go. It's not for me. I don't know what I want to do yet, so I'm not just gonna go. And then it was like a month before classes started, or I don't know the time frame. Sometime between May and August, we found out that Travis was moving back to our church permanently. Like he was done with his classes or whatever. Apparently, we didn't know this till way later, but he was kicked out of Bible college.
Yes. He got in trouble there.
he got in trouble there. No one knew. Well, I didn't know. Like the congregation didn't know. And so he moved to Elton permanently. And there was so much that I found out after all of us girls, like, because there were throughout the years, like 7 victims,
Mhm.
and not all of them were, I mean, when he moved away, there were more victims. And so we all kind of got together and finding out the timeline and what exactly happened. And I don't want to share too much of their story because it's their story,
Yes.
but he got kicked out of Gateway and went back to a different church where his parents were pastoring. They had left our church to pastor a different church when I was like 14. So he went back there, and then all of a sudden now he's back at the Elton church. Well, it's because things happened there that were found out, and he was moved to our church then. But we didn't find that out until just like within the last 2 years.
Yeah, and
So
found
anyway,
found out. So like Gateway College knows of his issues. His father and mother would have known if he got in
mhm,
trouble and came back. And yet
right.
somehow at some point he managed to get his preacher's license.
Yes. Yes. It was just nothing was ever properly taken care of, ever.
Well, boys will be boys.
Yeah, that's how it goes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But there was one piano lesson when I was like 9 that my pastor's wife, she worked at the school, she was like the principal of the school, Travis's mom, did open the double doors while the lessons were taking place. At that point, there wasn't anything happening, but she swung open the door and she said, "I told you this has to stay open." And this is what is after.
Oh,
So in my mind, it took a long time to process that even.
yep.
Like I was grown up to be like, why all of a sudden did the
Mm-hmm.
door, why was she so mad about it? And
Yeah.
then I'm like, I don't have proof. There's no proof. But in my mind, it's common sense that somehow she knew something.
Yeah. Something.
Something. But that was the fix. I'm just going to leave the
Leave the
door
door
open.
open. Yes, that will fix
Right.
everything.
But no conversation, nothing, that was the end of it. And so I remember walking back to my desk after that lesson had happened, thinking someone's about to come tap me on the shoulder and bring me into the office and have a talk with me. And I'm not ready for this. And I was just like panicking. I couldn't wait for school to end that day because I'm like, whew, what's going to happen? So there was that instance there. And then he was kicked out of Gateway. He went to Fond du Lac
Mhm.
and then to Elton. And it was all super within like a couple months. So we found out he was coming to Elton. And I was like, this isn't great.
Yeah.
And that he was going to offer piano lessons. And they put him in charge of the music. And
And his parents knew.
yes,
Yes.
yes, his parents knew. And again, I don't want to give away too much of the other girl's story because I know she does want to tell it.
Mhm.
But the parents definitely knew.
Yeah.
Definitely 100% knew
So
what had
they
happened.
didn't call your church and say, listen, our son is coming there. This has gone on here. He needs to not have access to young girls.
Not do music.
Yeah.
As far as I know, there wasn't a conversation.
Hmm.
If there was,
Well,
that's
if there
even more
was,
of a red flag.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
it's twice as bad because that's 2 pastors willing to ignore it and give him access to vulnerable kids in their church.
So that was kind of what we didn't know that
Mhm.
had happened. But knowing that now, he came back in one of the first services he was back. He came directly up to me, looked me straight in the eye, and asked me if I was going to take piano lessons again.
That must have been a weird feeling.
It was extremely weird because there were people standing around. So my true feelings and my true reaction, I just had to like, well, yeah, like why wouldn't I? You're this great, piano player. You're so good at music. Why would I not jump on this opportunity? And so I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then I don't know, something inside me just snapped, and I didn't stop to think about what I was doing. I just reacted, because as soon as he walked away, I caught a glimpse of my pastor's wife around the corner in the copy room office or whatever. And just without hesitation, within a matter of seconds, I just walked in there and shut the door. And I said, look, Travis is back. He's giving piano lessons, and he shouldn't. He was extremely inappropriate with myself and all of the other girls back when he gave lessons. And he just asked me if I wanted to take lessons again. She asked me what happened, and I was not comfortable sharing.
Yeah.
And so I just said, just know that that piano bench is big enough for 2 people. And she said, okay. And I turned around and I walked out. And I was like, whew. And as I was thinking, what did you just do?
Yeah.
Like, I was trying to process, like, what did you just do? All I knew is it was just like my body's way of saying, like, you don't want to be in the situation again. This isn't safe. And so that's what I did. And as I was walking, I wasn't even out of sight yet. And Travis was still there. And she came out of the room and said, Travis, I need to talk to you. I was like, he just saw me walk out. He's going to know it was me.
Right.
Like, and so again, I was 18 at the time, and I spent the rest of that Sunday in my room, so scared of what was going to happen. And again, that conversation that I didn't want to have. And I was waiting for, again, a knock on the door or my parents to come get me or a phone call. There was nothing. And so I was like, okay, like, pull yourself together. There's church Sunday night, so I'm going to go to church and just, I guess, see what happens. You know, maybe after the church service, they're going to keep us late. I don't know. And so I walked into church, and it was right when I walked into the sanctuary. Travis was standing in the back of the sanctuary. There wasn't many people around. Like, still, there were, you know, it was 15 minutes before church started, so people were there, but not like right in that vicinity. It was back by the sound booth. And he came up to me, he said, can I talk to you? And I was like, sure. And he goes, so I guess I'm supposed to apologize. And I said, okay. And then he walked away.
Wow.
And that was it. That was it. My parents were informed. None of the girls were questioned. I don't know what happened after that. But again, it was something that it took me having kids to realize just how awful and scary that is.
So did he go on and teach piano lessons after that?
He did.
Oh,
he
yeah.
did go on to teach piano lessons. And because I didn't get a chance to tell my story, no questions were asked, and we were supposed to be excited to have this opportunity, I was again put in that position to pretend like nothing was wrong, because I didn't want to be on the outside when everyone else was so excited. Like, I didn't want people to start questioning then. Yeah. Obviously, if the pastor's wife didn't have an issue with it, why should I? I was asked to forgive. Like, I'm told I'm supposed to apologize. In that scenario, I'm supposed to accept his apology. Right. And then that's it.
Or you have forgiveness in your heart and you're a sinner.
Right. So I felt like by not doing piano lessons and being in the music, which I had been, to just abruptly stop when Travis gets there, and after he apologized, how bad I look, you know, like, to not forgive him or to be, you know, have my parents question. I felt like, well, if the pastor's wife isn't going to make something of this, it must not be that big of a deal. And I will just continue being myself as best I can. And so I remember he kind of revamped the music ministry there. And he wanted to like separate altos and sopranos and stuff like that. So you had to go into him while he played the piano, and you had to sing in front of him alone. And I did it. And it was extremely uncomfortable. And the pastor's wife did come back to me and say, I did talk to Travis and we are going to let him continue doing the music. He'll just be monitored, is what she said. But
Can you imagine?
There was no monitoring of the situation.
Even if there had been, can you imagine having someone do your music that has to be monitored? But then I can promise you, if one of the girls had given herself a good haircut, like how fast do you think they would yank her out of her position, and that would be the end of it?
Oh,
But, he's just molesting and touching young girls. So,
yeah.
He's obviously valuable enough that something like that's not that important. It's just girls. So
yeah, we're just gonna, the music ministry and what, God can do with his talents is we shouldn't stop that.
Isn't it disgusting? Like
it is so
I feel
disgusting.
Angry. And this isn't the first time I've heard it. I'm mad again.
Yeah, I know. I can't even begin to wrap my head around that. So with all of that happening, it was just a couple weeks before classes at Gateway started, and I said, I'm going.
Yeah.
Like, why would I want to stay?
It was an escape.
My friends were going, and so I was like, hey, Mom, Dad, guess what? I'm packing and I'm moving. Like, and so, yeah, like I don't even think like I had submitted all my stuff or had like a formal acceptance there. I was just like, I'm good. I did have to have like the pastor's approval, which when I initially applied, I had that, to go. So yeah, I just showed up and they're like, okay, yes, take classes. I didn't know what I was going
for. They'll take it.
Yeah, I didn't know I'm like, what am I even doing here? So hence like the 2 months of going there, but a lot more. There's a whole other spin on that. But come to find out in the past 2 years, with all of the victims talking and stuff and I had no idea that right after I had left, that's when there was another victim. And she was underage. And he took advantage of the situation. And lo and behold, another, just literally within weeks or months of me leaving and trying to explain, like, that he is not safe to be around. And then there was another victim.
You have to wonder what the magic number is. Like for these people who find out, like pastors and pastors' wives and stuff, what's the magic number? Like how many girls are you willing to sacrifice at the feet of a talented piano player?
Right.
Is it 6?
It should be
7? Is it 10? Like how many female lives ruined so you can hear some good piano playing on Sunday?
Right. Exactly. It's so messed up. It's so wrong. And it makes me sick.
I know a lot of UPCers will say, well, that was terrible. That was just that one situation. That was that one bad pastor. But I mean, right now we're talking about 2 sets of pastors. And this is a way more common theme than what anybody would ever care to admit. So this mindset of sacrificing girls, it does exist.
Yes, exactly. And when I found out about that victim after I had left, again, it wasn't until just a couple of years ago. And the pastors there did find out. They were informed. And again, I don't want to tell her story. She has her own story. So I don't want to step on feet. But I do know that she was removed from the platform. They were both removed from the platform.
And she was underage, and so they were both removed as if it were a consensual. Wow.
Yep.
I mean, not wow. I take back that wow. I'm not a bit surprised. Of course.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't want to. Everyone else, they have their own stories,
right? No, I understand.
So I don't want to get to, but it's all intertwined in the timing of it, the timelines. It's just, it all happened like so fast there for that little bit, when we were all younger and he was there, that was way in the past. But then when he moved back, like it was like bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
And then he moved shortly after that
To go bless another church.
Yeah, well, I think he went and admitted himself to some sort of sex addiction therapy camp or something.
Because he had gotten found out and caught.
Yes. And according to him, he wasn't sent there. He voluntarily, with his own money, paid for it and went, which, okay. But then there was another, when the group of us went to finally report it to law enforcement and they had put it out on social media, there was another girl from Maryland who did reach out to law enforcement to give a report as well.
Been after?
That was after he got out of that camp rehab facility. So yeah,
that didn't work.
So many chances for it to be stopped. So many. And there was also one of the other victims had tried to warn his wife's pastor because they were just dating at the time. And she's like, she called her up, hey, this is heavy on my heart. I want you to know this. And it was, they had replied with, he told us and he's sorry.
So basically. He had control of the narrative and told them his version of events and he's sorry. Who would marry somebody with that kind of a past?
Well, we don't know what he admitted
to. Was told, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like who knows at that point what it was. Obviously, not what it really was.
The narrative is so important because it's like this Robert Morris scandal. I don't know if you've been following this, the big megachurch pastor at Gateway. He when he was in his 20s had sexual interaction with she was 12 and she was super innocent, had no clue, just and he predatorily set that up and saw her out and stuff. And so when it came up, he had control of the narrative. And so again, he says, well, I admitted to this. I said, but he called her a young lady. Mm-hmm. Yes, I had an inappropriate sexual encounter with a young lady. Well, like, I don't think of a kid when you say young lady. So, I mean, again, this is it. Whatever Travis told them, he had control of the narrative.
Exactly. And at no point, like, I felt like so many of us had tried so many different times to speak and to be heard and for someone to care and we're just down.
Yeah.
That it wasn't until just last month when all of us got to read our victim impact statements in court in front of a judge where we could write what we wanted. I felt that was the first time that we were heard and validated. And when we gave our reports to the law enforcement too, but it was, none of this would have happened if we didn't start talking again in 2022 and being like, hey, this is not, we're all like, almost all of us are parents now. Yeah. Like, this is not okay. And do we want to even, should we try to do something? We tried to in the past within the church. We told leaders and pastors and nothing was done, and it still didn't, feel right. And so we're like, yeah, we're going to just go to law enforcement and see what happens. And we're kind of scattered throughout, yeah. I'm in South Dakota, it happened in Wisconsin. We've got friends, kind of all over the place. And so the ones that were local went in to the sheriff's office and gave a report, and we mailed or emailed ours in. And the next day he was arrested. And that feeling of, we were right this whole time, which we knew because we were older, but to have that feeling like
validation,
we went to someone and they did what they were supposed to do.
Yes.
like they did the right thing and they didn't tell us to forgive. We
Right.
were like, forgiveness is for internally for yourself. It doesn't mean to continue to stay in a toxic or abusive relationship.
Right.
And I struggled really, really hard with that specific issue. Was like, am I not forgiving? Am I holding a grudge because I don't want to be near people who've hurt me? That messed with me for years. So long it messed with me because I've had other traumas too that were the same outcome. I was just supposed to forgive.
Yeah.
And I am okay with sharing, a little bit of those other situations
Sure.
because they are still within the UPC church. But when I was 6, I was molested by my grandpa. He wasn't in the church, but again, I carried that with me and never spoke up about it. And then, the thing with Travis happened when I was 9. And again, just kept it quiet. But when I was pregnant in 2009, I had my first son and I was 8 months pregnant. And that's when I decided to speak up about what happened because I didn't want to be in that environment. I couldn't imagine bringing my son into that environment where no one knew but me. And had to keep an eye on him and keep him safe. And I'm
So
like,
that was with your grandfather. You were worried about taking your child around I mean, that makes sense.
yeah. So I was so worried, but it was a very big, big, close knit family. Like we'd have 80 some people at the house, at my grandparents' house for Christmases and Thanksgiving and every single holiday. I think we probably even made up holidays just to get together. So it was a super close family where some of my aunts and cousins were Pentecostal and
Hmm.
some, it was just a big, and so when I did finally come out and speak about what had happened with my grandpa, 2 years later, he was arrested. And I found out that an aunt of mine who is UPC wrote a letter on his behalf saying that he was a really good father, a good dad, grandpa, an outstanding citizen. Please do not sentence him to prison. Let him stay out of prison, basically. And then she took that letter and she went around to all of my aunts and uncles and cousins and God knows who, even my mom, to have them sign this letter saying he was such a good person. And so, again, this was 2 years after I had spoke up. There was, a long gap between what the family was going to do about grandpa, And so another cousin came forward, and that's why he was eventually arrested
Okay.
because another one of my cousins was also molested. And it was the UPC aunt that was like, no, don't put him in prison. And so I called her and I said, hey, I heard you wrote this letter. Can you explain it to me? Can you explain why you did it? And I told her, I'm like, all of that is a lie. Like, he's not a great person. Why would you do this? Like, that's very hurtful.
Yeah.
And also, where's my letter? And she
Yeah.
was like, what? Like, I didn't get a letter. You haven't said a word to me in 2 years about this. Like, how is this okay? And so again, I was put in that position where I'm just supposed to forgive. Like,
Hmm.
I'm just supposed to come home to family reunions and be happy and
And
pretend like
comfortable.
everything's and comfortable. And
Yeah.
yeah, and like at that point, then was at home on maternity leave with my daughter because two years had gone
Right.
by since I told and he was arrested. So now I'm at home on maternity leave with my daughter when all of this is happening. And so um it was just like, forgive? Like, yes, I can forgive, but I don't want to go home. And so I did have to cut ties with family, which was really, really hard because I was very close. And but the thing is I knew in my heart that what I was doing was the right thing to do,
Yeah.
but it is a very lonely thing. You do
Mhm.
feel very abandoned, um, and like you're not as important.
You're not just feeling it, you are being abandoned.
Yeah. And even though they would all say, no, they love me and they want, we really want Alicia to come home. Why would you put me in that situation? Why
Inappropriate.
would you give me that ultimatum? Like, come home and be with us because we love you, but your abuser will be here too. But we expect you to have a good time.
Yeah,
Like,
have a good time and bring your kids and relax, but your abuser is going to be here with the trust of everyone.
yeah. So I don't think they would say that they agree with me because they do, it's my mom tells me all the time, they love you, they love you, they love you. And it's just like, I feel like love wouldn't put me in that situation.
I agree.
And I do forgive them. But again, I need to draw a line. And for
Yeah.
so many years, I've been chastised and told I have forgiveness issues because I can't put myself in that situation. So yeah, it's
Well, I think the place you draw the line is safety. And
exactly.
that's where the boundary is. And so it's not a forgiveness issue. It's they have an issue with your boundaries and your boundaries are healthy.
Yep. And I need to have them.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It kind of goes to like, I'm debating on what to share about my marriage too.
Right.
Because it was this same exact thing where I was told to forgive and stay with my now ex-husband. I met him in the 2 months I was at the Bible college and just decided, I guess we were in love, and I moved to South Dakota, which is where he is from. And we got married in 2008. And the marriage just really started going downhill fast. And he became physically abusive. And so when I finally came out and said something, the church didn't really support me at all. There were no questions asked. I was told to go pray with him. I felt like, I don't know, when I walked in the room, people just wouldn't even look at me hardly. And he had been arrested on aggravated assault charges, and I still was supposed to stay with him. So there's definitely, when I think about my time in the UPC church, I relate it to trauma.
Yeah.
Just throughout my entire experience. So yes, were there good times? Yes, there were good times. But when it came down to the bad times and what should have been done and how people should have reacted, it just fell apart.
Yeah. I mean, the impact it has had on your life has been, it completely destroyed your life.
It did. When I realized I was supposed to just forgive again, which I did tell my grandpa back when I first came out and said what had happened when I was 6. I said, I forgive you. And he replied with, don't ruin my life.
Don't ruin my life. Okay.
Yeah. And that was in 2009. And so like, why would I want to come back and hang out?
Well, I
Like
mean,
there's so
there's
many
a massive divide, I think, between forgiveness and reconciliation. You can forgive somebody and have nothing to do with that person again for the rest of your life and be completely justified.
Yes, but I didn't hear that. I
No.
didn't hear that. Not one time in any of those instances. I was always told that I had a problem, that
Yeah.
it was me. And that really was hard to get over mentally. I struggled a lot with, do I have a problem? Like I felt so gaslit, like,
100%. Yeah.
is it me that has this problem? I mean, there's so many situations in my life where I've had to cut people off and draw a line. I'm like, is it me?
Yeah, because you're thinking, okay, like one situation where I had to cut these people off, that's one thing. But then you're like, well, I'm the common denominator in all these situations. Am I the
Exactly.
problem?
That's how I felt. And I had to go back and reevaluate and be like, okay, with Travis, I was 9. I dressed appropriately. Like, no, I wasn't the problem. With my grandpa, I was 6. I was not the problem.
Hmm.
Drawing these boundaries is healthy,
Well, and
and
even
then
if
with,
you hadn't been dressed appropriately with the Travis situation, clothing isn't even, it doesn't matter.
exactly, but they ingrain that into your
They
brain,
do, yeah.
so it's just something you have to get over. And then with my ex-husband, um, same, I had to be like, did I do the right thing? Like, was it me?
Yeah.
And the more I would start to tell people what had happened that weren't in the church, they're like, you were not the problem. Like, no one deserves to be treated like that.
Do you think
And
the church just expects everyone to go along and pretend everything's perfect and just, we're all here and it's all great. And so then if you say, hey, this thing happened and it's a bad thing, they're like, ooh, you're making us uncomfortable. Just be quiet, would you? Like, we're busy pretending everything's perfect here. Whereas when
yeah,
you step outside of the church, no one expects life to be perfect. Everyone is pretty logical. And so when you say,
yeah,
this terrible thing happened to me, their instant response is not to assess your motives and your spiritual life and look at you. They're just like, whoa, that's terrible.
yeah,
It's a terrible thing.
yep. Yeah, 'cause, yeah, in the church, it's more of like, well, if all this bad stuff is happening to you, you must not be aligned with God's plan for your life.
Right. The only way you can get away with being a victim is, how's your prayer life? What were you wearing? Were you being submissive enough? This,
Mm-hmm.
that, the other thing. And so, like, if you can tick all these boxes of absolute perfection in their eyes,
Mm-hmm.
then you're allowed to be a victim and someone is seen as having crossed a line.
Yep. And you're allowed to be a victim, and the narrative flips to, well, God must be using you, and the devil is causing these problems.
Yeah,
These problems are coming from the devil. He's attacking you because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
yeah, or God must have something big for you.
Yep. He
Your
only gives his
testimony
toughest
is going to
battles. Yeah.
be, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So the narrative flips depending on what boxes you check off
yeah,
on the
whether they
outside.
approve of you or not. So when
Exactly.
bad things happen to you, it's because you walked away from God and it's the chastisement of God. When bad things happen to them, who of course they see very warmly, they see themselves, then it
Mm-hmm.
is an attack of the enemy. Let us pray, right?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. So we can never be right.
No.
We It's impossible to be right. And that really messes with your head.
Yeah.
And again, we're taught too, like, you shouldn't need therapy and you shouldn't be depressed if you have God in your heart
Yeah, the Holy
too.
Ghost will take care of it all.
Yeah. And it's like, that is, so many people need help. And it's
Hmm.
bad things happen, good things happen. It doesn't matter what boxes you're checking. So it is, yeah, it is part of life. Yeah. So I definitely got therapy, and I was diagnosed with CPTSD, which makes sense.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was told by my pastor here that you were never really living for God anyway, is what, after I left the church, we had a conversation, and I was like, okay.
I wonder how many of them would have hung in as long as you did, experiencing the deep traumas that you experienced and then the secondary abuse from everyone around you. Like, these people can be so flippant, like, oh, well, you never were. It's like, are you kidding me? Do you realize how long I hung in and how much I put up with?
Yeah, how much I struggled to just even stay alive, it felt like, for the
Yeah.
most part. My whole life has felt just survival mode. It's always just been, just get through it, just get through it. and there was never an end. And I did, my divorce was final, and I left the UPC church in 2015. And that was the darkest time of my life, because I had really no support system, except a couple of family members. I have a younger brother who's not UPC, and my parents were really supportive. They also left the church at that point too, because they moved out here to South Dakota. And so they were in the same church as I was and stuff. My whole family moved here. And so they left, but my support system, like, I felt like I had no one. And I abused alcohol the nights that I didn't have my kids, because I didn't get full custody. I didn't ask for it. I said he was a good dad and that he just hated me, which then the next 5 years of my life were awful. But in 2019, I did attempt suicide by overdosing because I was tired. And to be gaslit by the church and by family is one thing, but to hear it from your kids who know nothing really except for what they're told, but to hear them say that mommy's going to hell, was really hard. But we have a good relationship now. But yeah, things haven't been easy. And I do think it's not that, I don't know. I look back and it's all tied into the UPC religion. So, I don't know. I feel like I am in a better spot. Ever since the trial ended, I just felt like really empowered. And I listened to like all of your YouTube videos on the drive back from Wisconsin, because I drove by myself, and it was a 10-hour drive, and everything that I was hearing and saying, it just really built me up and made me feel like I'm not alone. There's this whole group of people that are with me and that understand me, and I understand them, and I am not the problem. And I just want to be happy, and the rest of my life, I just want to worry about myself and my kids and my family and leave the rest of it behind. So I feel like I'm in a really good spot right now.
I'm glad to hear that. Just want to say this. Anybody out there who considers themselves a Christian, who is teaching their children to view one of their parents as somebody going to hell because they're not part of their church, you are abusing your children. You do not teach children things like that. That's abusive to the child. It's absolutely gut-wrenching to the other parent. And so many times they're talking about somebody who just left their church, not somebody who left God or who doesn't have faith anymore. So many times it's just, well, they're not with us, therefore they're going to hell. And the things that are said to kids, again, this goes back to the not viewing kids as kids.
Right.
Just expecting them to hear adult things and be able to process them in a healthy way. It's so messed up.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's so messed up. I did put my kids in counseling, and it's just hard though when one parent's UPC and the other one's not. I even tried to go to another church just to, go to church. I still wanted to go to a church, and it wouldn't work out because it wasn't the truth.
Right.
We go because it wasn't the truth. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to fight that battle, so we don't go at all anymore. So I really did want to share my story because I know that there's so many other people that are stuck in the situation or have experienced this. And I just want them to know, like, you are not alone. Mm-hmm. And if you've gone to like a leader or a pastor with abuse and it didn't go anywhere after that, please go to law enforcement. That is a red flag. That is a red flag. Go to law enforcement.
go to law
Yeah.
enforcement, and then if your pastor is UPC and they won't do anything about this, you contact me. And
Yes.
I have connections in the UPC with people who will move things like this forward. And so
Mhm.
just your pastor doesn't get to decide.
Right.
Wrong is
Right.
wrong, and big deal, your pastor's wrong too. So you
Hmm.
can
Yes, your
contact
pastor
me.
can be wrong.
Oh my goodness, no. He's the man of God, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Life can be better.
Yes, it can. And I'm so glad you're in a better place now. And I'm so
Hmm.
glad you're still here. Can I just say that, Alicia? I'm so glad you're still here. Um,
Me too.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. Got remarried and we have a baby in life. Like I'm experiencing so many moments of just complete joy that
Mhm.
I I look at life through a different lens. In every moment that is a happy moment is like 10 times happier for me. Yeah, I'm a completely different person and I'm so glad I'm here too. So,
I think I shared this with you when we chatted before, but I had this friend a Facebook friend who shared on Facebook that I don't know how many years ago it was, but she was going through a really rough time too, and she was suicidal. And she said, now I look back and life has been so good. She said the last 10 years I remarried. I'm doing so much better. Like, her circle
mhm.
of friends has changed. Everything has changed. She's become a grandmother. She's so excited. And she said, I just think I would have missed so much. And
Yeah,
so I guess I would just encourage anybody, like if you're feeling hopeless, things do get better.
mhm.
Bad seasons have to end at some point, and
Yeah,
you don't know what you'll be missing. You don't know what wonderful things are in your future. And so I don't know, I guess I would just encourage you to reach out for help
same.
because
It gets better.
yeah. So I guess I would ask you where you landed spiritually.
I believe in God. I've never had the feeling like he abandoned me, even though I felt completely alone at times. I just didn't understand. I didn't know why. And if I asked why too many times, that's when I'd just go into a spiral. Even the night that I tried to overdose, I still wasn't mad at God. I don't remember being mad at him. I was just tired. And
Yeah.
I felt like he would understand.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
I
So
get that. So it
mm,
wasn't like you were mad at God, but the church had worn you out.
the church, family,
Yeah.
friends that I thought were friends, I felt like every group that I came from or belonged to wasn't there anymore. The Wisconsin family, that was such a big, tight knit family, church family in Wisconsin, church family in South Dakota. My kids not having them, it was just very tiring and lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I know God's real
Mhm.
and I know that's why I'm happy today. So
Yeah.
yeah. I just don't go to church. Yeah, and I'm fine with it. I think it's fine. I know God knows my heart, and that's what I tell my daughter. If we ever have a conversation about it, God knows my heart, and that's important. So, yeah.
So I guess the last but not least question I ask everyone who left the UPC is, are you bitter? Because the second you speak out in any kind of a negative way, they immediately pile on and are like, oh, well, look at you. You have unforgiveness. You have bitterness. You're bitter. So if anybody has the right to be bitter, I think you're the person at the front of the line of all the people I have ever talked to and heard from has every right to be bitter.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Winner!
I win the award. Yeah, I don't feel like I am, but I can already hear voices of people in the church being like, oh yeah, right. But no, I was just hurt. I was just hurt. And I can forgive and get over it and just maintain boundaries. And boundaries look like bitterness, but I don't think I'm bitter.
I think that was a really good point. I think boundaries look like bitterness to people who don't have healthy boundaries and who want to cross those boundaries.
I agree. And I was told a couple of years ago, like I was told, you're just not the same person anymore. Like it was a bad thing. And I was like really proud. I was like really proud. Like, thank God.
Yeah.
I want everyone to know that they can't mess with me anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't have to feel guilty about it. And I don't have to feel like I have forgiveness issues because of it. Like, I am very proud of who I am, and that some people might be a little bit afraid to start a conversation with me.
So, I like that about you.
Yeah, it's a little empowering. Yeah.
And they should
Taking
be,
the power
right?
back. Yeah, absolutely.
Some people should be afraid to start, especially some of the conversations they try to start. Yeah, you should be afraid.
Yeah, I will say what I think. Yeah, and I'm not going to be the one to feel awkward or out of place or embarrassed, or like you see someone at Walmart and you're like, oh, I don't want to see him. Like, no, I just like walk in there like, what's up?
I have every right to be here.
Yeah. If anyone should feel awkward, it should be you. Yeah. So
that's a sign of healing and growth, not bitterness.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's good. So
I also think when women turn 40,
I'm so close. Yeah.
Things change. So brace yourself, because
yeah, I could be dangerous. Yeah. Yep. Oh gosh, yeah. But thank you so much for what you do in your channel. This, like, getting everything out and sharing it and hoping that it can help someone has been something I've been wanting to do for years, and I do feel like it's therapeutic. And thank you for doing this. Whatever made you, well, I know your story and stuff made you start this, but yeah, it's been amazing to do this.
Well, thank you for trusting me with your story, and I feel honored, seriously. And it's been my privilege to do this, and I'm very thankful that you were willing to come on and share, because I do think it's going to resonate with people who need that affirmation and the comfort and the support. And so thank you so much for sharing, Alicia, and being so open.
Absolutely.
It's not easy to share things that involve family and friends. And I just really appreciate you sticking your neck out like that.
Thank you. Yeah. During the, because I know that you're working closely with some of the UPC leaders with the Safe Church stuff and towards that, which I think is great. I think it's awesome.
Well, we're not exactly working together.
Oh yeah, no.
I'm like a pain in their butt, maybe, who asks too many questions and
Yeah, which is great. Someone has to. So that, yeah. But I just wanted to mention that during the hearing last month, Travis's sentence hearing, that there were no Pentecostal, there was no one from the district or anyone there to stand with us and represent us at all.
There were okay. Let's just take a minute before we close up and talk about that, because
yeah.
So nobody from the district went.
Mm-mm.
The superintendent didn't go.
No.
So that would be Jim Booker.
Mm-hmm.
This was a huge case.
Yes.
This case is tied to his father's case, which is massive.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably one of the biggest scandals to rock the UPC in a good long time, and nobody went to support the survivors.
No. So, and we were hoping, we were hoping. I did end up emailing Jim Booker at the beginning of this, before we went to law enforcement, telling him like we were going to go to law enforcement, this was going to happen, and they were going to have that whole, investigation thing if he wasn't arrested. But then he was, so then they just had him turn in his license. They took it from him. But so we had that, email correspondence and stuff. And so we were hoping that they would be there, he would be there for us. And yeah, just to give us that, just for that little tiny piece of someone in that religion that we all had this negative experience with throughout several different churches.
Yeah.
Was hearing us and was agreeing with us, because we never really got that. So it was kind of like I guess, typical. So.
Well, if anyone UPC is listening to this, especially anyone in ministry, oh my goodness, how many times do we have to say, do better, stop supporting your own, and
stand with the victim.
Yeah, stand with the victims. Like, I know the Wesley Henderson case, there is a couple, and I don't know if they're licensed ministers or if they're like assistant, but they drove from Maine to Texas to sit with him in his trial about molesting his grandchildren. And he got 99 years. That's how serious it was. He got 99 years out of it.
I can't even wrap my mind around that. One of my with my ex-husband, I did have to get a couple protection orders I had. And there was a hearing, and the pastor did show up and sit behind my ex. And I was just like, okay.
So he was there to support your ex and not there to support you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. It's just time after time after time after time. And there needs to be a change.
Yeah. It's got to be like a whole mindset shift. And
it has to start at the top.
Yeah.
It has to start at the top, for sure.
Yeah. And it has to start at the top in a way that's very vocal. That way the people under know what's expected.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm hoping that this helps.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
I hope so too, Alicia. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, if you enjoyed this video, you can like it, you can share it. If you can think of somebody that this might encourage or help, please, by all means, even if you just share it with them privately and you don't want to share it in public social media where people might see, send them the link. And if you want YouTube to notify you whenever I post a new video, you can subscribe and hit the little notification bell, and they will do that. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.